All right, welcome back to Mowgli Goes Fishing. It is actually Christmas Day, and I have myself my very own Christmas present, an Amazon mud motor. This thing cost me around $400, $450. Some assembly was required. So I just wanted to go over really quick what all this was like for me. The buying process wasn't that bad. You know, you click it, you pay for it, it comes in the mail. But the assembly was a little bit odd. The motor here had instructions, but there was no instructions on how to attach the propeller shaft to the motor. So I just wanted to go over it a little bit in case anybody else has these and you may have some questions. So when you buy the kit, it'll probably come in two boxes. Big square box holding the motor and a longer box holding the propeller shaft. There are 3 different sets of bolts. The shortest ones are used to install the propeller shaft onto the output of the engine shaft. The engine shaft will have a keyway, long rectangular keyway that goes along the shaft. And inside the packaging you'll find a large metal ring. It's very important you put this on before you install the propeller and your keyway. You want to go ahead and just grease that ring up a little bit, slide it over the output shaft, and then set your keyway in place. It may take a couple of little light taps with a wood block to set the keyway in place like it was. And once that's secure, you line up the keyway inside of the propeller shaft and slide it in place. It really helps to have 2 people or to have it mounted and sturdy before you try to slip the propeller shaft onto the output shaft of the motor. And then you use the smallest bolts in the package to secure it to the side of the motor. The medium bolts will be used to secure the motor to the cradle, is what I'm going to call it. And the cradle does pivot onto the surface mount. Mount this in your boat any which way you can. That's completely up to the owner. And then your longest bolts, of course, will be for these metal shackles. And it may take a little bit of doing to get those in place. I noticed that the bar here actually started to bend a little bit and curve in with this lower thing once I set that in place and started to tighten the rear shackle. Make sure you put in your flat washers and your lock washers. I'm sure this thing's going to rattle loose after a bit of time on the water, so I will be going back over it with a wrench and checking everything is tight. Looked in the book on what kind of oil to use. It was recommended to have 10W30 for my temperature ranges, and it took 3/4 of a quart, just about, to fill up the motor. And I've got it here on the boat, probably about as level as I could get it, and it just came out the bottom of the dipstick tube. And then I put the dipstick back in and tightened it down. For its first fire up, I got the high grade gas. Not going to use the cheap stuff with this one because I want it to last a while and I don't want to have any issues if I can help it. But this is the 212cc 7.5 horsepower kit that comes on Amazon. And we are about to fire this bad boy up for the first time. So I'm going to set this down somewhere where we can all look at it together and I can have my hands free, and we're going to fire it up. Right on. There is no primer that I can see on the carb assembly. Everything seems to be good. Spark plug is tight. So let's just give it a shot here. Fingers crossed. That didn't sound too good. Let's go half choke. There we go. She is running. It doesn't look like it on camera, but that propeller is actually moving pretty damn fast. So even at idle, this thing is going to be trying to move on you. I'd recommend pulling the motor all the way up while you're firing up. But we're here at my yard and it doesn't have a water pump, so it'll stay cool. Come on, Kyle. Quit getting tongue-tied. Put your full thoughts out there. All right, everybody. So I've ran this motor for a half an hour now. We drained the oil, and I have to go to town and get some new. But before we do that, I want to talk about a couple of small concerns I have for the motor before we go out. And it's primarily safety stuff. So just really quickly, you really do need to replace the mechanical on-off switch with a safety switch. It's not going to be too difficult to wire that up. If you're unfamiliar, any powered vessel where the motor needs to have a safety switch, especially like a bass boat. I don't care if you're like in a seat somewhere, you know, riding in a bass boat, or if you're on a John boat with a tiller, you need to have a safety switch so that if you fall off the vessel, it'll pull, the switch will turn off and kill power to the motor, and the motor will stop. The boat will stop, the motor will stop, whether it's going to sink or not. This motor needs to shut down if I fall off the boat. And that's a primary safety concern, not only for you as the boater, but all the people on the water as well. So I'm pretty sure in all of America, you are required to have a safety switch on any powered vessel like this. So I'm gonna have to make that happen. A couple other things to be aware of is that propeller will spin no matter what RPMs this motor is running at. So even at its lowest RPM, it is going to be spinning that propeller shaft. There's no neutral on these motors, so be aware of that before you fire it up. It will turn that shaft every time you turn the handle on this thing to fire it up. The only other concern that I have is vibrations, and we're going to solve that problem by using some Loctite. This one is Blue 242. It is removable. It will be tough to remove if you have to, but it's dang sure better than letting all your bolts rattle off. Just to be clear, this one, my mounting bolt right here, it decided it wanted to rattle off while I was breaking this thing in. So we're just going to go over all of the exterior bolts and throw in a little bit of thread locker to be on the safe side. Hello everybody, welcome back to Mowgli Goes Fishing. I'm very excited for today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to announce the return of the gray goose. She is all fixed up and ready to go. We have our new Amazon 7.5 horsepower mud motor ready to rock. Everything is all ready. There was just a couple of things that I had to finish up on this mud motor, and I'll go over those real quickly with you in just a short little while. Let me get sat down, put everything away, and we'll get underway. Okay, just wanted to show you guys what all else I had to do for this motor. There was some trouble with the kill switch because you have to have one whenever you're on a boat. So I'm gonna go over that first. This is the switch that comes on the motor. It's just like your typical pressure washer setup. And all three of these wires, this black one, the yellow one coming out of the engine, and this black one coming out of the switch, were all wired together. All three of these wires were slipped together in a fitting. What I've done is just eliminated this switch entirely, took it out of the equation, so just ignore that. I have a ground wire down here onto the base of the motor. I connected these two wires together and ran it in my other wire. And this is just regular old speaker wire you can get from Walmart. It was cheap. None of these wires are very heavy gauge and they're stranded, so it's not that big of a deal. But the trouble was I couldn't find a switch that I needed to make it a kill switch so that when it was released, it would turn the motor off. So the solution for that was go to an auto parts store and find yourself a door jamb switch for a car. A universal will do it as long as it has at least 2 poles on it. You should be able to make it work. And I'll go ahead and show you what I've got. I wired this one to my seat, so while you have it pressed, the motor will operate. When it's released, the motor turns off. It's a very simple thing. It's got 2 poles on it. And all that's doing is grounding the wiring system out to the base of the motor. So all you got to do is send it to a ground. It's a pretty simple little thing. This one only cost me $6. You can find fancier ones. This one's pretty stiff. It takes quite a bit to push it down. I believe I took a screenshot of the part number, so I'll throw it up on screen if I can remember. But so that's what I've done. That way, while I'm sitting in my seat, I just hold the button down. Whenever I want to, if there's a problem, I get thrown from the boat, this switch will be released and the motor will cut off. And that's important. If you get thrown from the boat, you don't want the boat to get away from you and hurt somebody else. That's the main thing. It's keeping it safe for everybody else on the water. But with that said, we're gonna go ahead and try this motor out again. I've been having trouble with my handle because the bolt that came with mine was all kinds of crooked. So I wound up buying a much larger tap and die. I tapped this out, put new threads into the handle, and I've just taken and filed these little grooves that are in the handle piece right there to kind of lock that in together. I filed those down so they would actually lock better. And then I've got this giant bolt over here that I went ahead and bolted that in with. Had to get a little creative. You can see that I made that bolt flat on two sides, but it's the biggest bolt that I could find at a hardware store in my area. I think it's like a 12-inch bolt, and it fits into the handle about this far with the threads. So we should be good to go. It's definitely not anywhere near as loose or jittery as the first time I tried this. So let's get under power. We'll go down the river. Okay. Wow, that is unfortunate. So my handle's up too high and the prop is making cavitation. You can feel it. It'll be like spinning in the air, and then it'll grab hold of a solid water column and just be like torque. It's very hard to steer with the handle all the way up like that, so we're going to adjust the handle down a bit where it's going to be pretty level whenever I'm under power and got the prop all the way down, and we're going to see if that helps out. All right, I've made some adjustments to the motor in its position. The handle is still a little bit high. It's just not working right. We're cavitating really bad, but I don't know what to do about it. I guess I'm just not back far enough to avoid cavitation. So I've got just that much room to scoot it back, we'll go ahead and scoot it all the way back as far as we can. But I'm not sure if it's going to help me very much. May wind up having to build a platform off the back of the boat just to get it away from the back of the hull, keep it from cavitating. It's weird. For all the problems I thought I was going to have, this cavitation was not one of them. But also I think the propeller that's on this thing is really not made very well. Not a whole lot of thought went into it, and the propeller itself is not very big, so it's pretty much the RPMs are too fast to catch water. I may have to get creative and put a different prop on the end of it.